There was a war, not of men, but of angels. A rebellion that began not with blood, but with a thought. One archangel dared to challenge the throne of God himself, but here's the mystery. No one dares to answer. Why didn't God destroy Satan? Why does the darkness still speak, still move, still tempt, as if untouched? The answer is more terrifying and more divine than you think. Stay until the end of this video, and God will bless you in ways you never expected. Before darkness ever had a name, it wore the face of light. A light so pure that every angel bowed in awe. Before he was ever called Satan, he bore another name, one that rang through the heavens like a holy bell. Lucifer, the bearer of light. He was not born from the pit, but stood nearest to the throne of Almighty God. Lucifer was never created to rebel. He was formed in splendor, woven from the music of heaven, and wrapped in divine radiance. His presence reflected the beauty of the Creator. He did not merely shine, he was the crown jewel of heaven's glory. But even at the height of holiness, pride whispered its first word. God gave every thinking being a gift, both dangerous and divine: free will. Not to revolt, but to truly love. And Lucifer, in all his perfection, began to gaze inward. He saw himself brilliant, majestic, radiant. He began to admire himself more than the one who made him. A single thought appeared, so small it made no noise, but it did not vanish. It grew. Why must I submit? Why can't I ascend? The question was not spoken aloud, but it rooted in his spirit like a serpent curling in silence. Lucifer began to spread that idea, not through war, but through whispers. He walked among the angels, planting seeds of doubt. He spoke of liberty, of hidden potential, of a kingdom where no one bowed to one king. And a third of heaven's host turned their hearts toward him. They still sang. They still held their light. But their loyalty had shifted. The first rebellion didn't start with swords. It began with a fracture in faith, a soft departure from devotion, a poison, scentless and slow curling like smoke beneath the golden halls. God saw it all. Every thought, every tremor, every soul drifting from the light. But he didn't stop them. He didn't strike them down. Love never forces. Justice never rushes. Light does not compete. It simply waits. Lucifer no longer knelt. He stood tall, gazing at heaven's throne. Within him thundered a silent declaration. I will ascend to the heavens. I will set my throne above the stars. I will sit on the mount of the congregation. I will become like the Most High. It wasn't just a statement. It was war. And with that vow, the light within him died. The name Lucifer no longer fit. He became Satan, the adversary. Those who followed him were no longer holy messengers, but fallen ones, cut off, broken, damned. The war ignited. Michael, loyal to the Almighty, rose up and led the faithful host. A battle unseen by mortal eyes tore across the heavens. Blades of flame, thunderous wings, cries of war from angelic voices never meant for blood, not for power, but for allegiance. Satan lost. Cast out from heaven, he and his followers were hurled into the abyss. But they were not destroyed. They lived on. They roamed. They tempted. They brought chaos into the world of men. And now comes the question, the one that haunts every preacher, every saint, every seeker. Why didn't God destroy Satan immediately? Why let him live? Why permit him to deceive, corrupt, and ruin? Is it because God couldn't, or because he wouldn't? The answer lies deeper, not in logic, but in divine wisdom. Not because God lacked power, but because he chose to wait, to let evil expose itself, to let darkness self-destruct, to let all creation, seen and unseen, witness the full weight of a single wrong choice. If God had destroyed Satan, at once free will would have become an illusion. Who would dare choose anything if destruction was immediate? That's not love, that's coercion. He allowed darkness to breathe so that light would be chosen freely. He allowed evil to move so that righteousness would have meaning. And above all, he was preparing something far greater than vengeance. A rescue plan, a holy intervention named Jesus Christ, not through annihilation, but through sacrifice. Not with violence, but with a cross. Satan believed he had won when man fell. But it was there, at mankind's lowest point, that God unleashed his highest purpose, turning rebellion into a stage for redemption. Lucifer, the once radiant being, had now become a shadow. But his final destruction was not yet written, because God had not forgotten. He was simply waiting for the right hour, the moment when every eye would see, every soul would understand, only the way of God leads to life. So tonight, if you feel darkness clinging close, if you wonder whether light has left this world, remember, this is only the beginning. Satan has not yet been destroyed, not because he has won, but because he is walking toward his own ruin. And the rest of the story will reveal why justice may be delayed, but is never absent. The halls of heaven had never known fear. They echoed with praise, rang with joy, pulsed with a harmony that stretched across the ages. But on one dreadful day, long before time was time, the music faltered. Not loudly, just a single note off key, a subtle shift, a dissonance that no angel dared name. Lucifer had not declared war with fire or steel. He didn't scream. He whispered. He walked through the courts of the Most High, with elegance still intact, glory still unshaken, voice still smooth. And yet, what he carried now wasn't praise. It was poison. 1/3 of heaven's host leaned in to listen. Not all believed, but many, hesitated. Could there be more? Lucifer asked. Is submission the only way? He never spoke against the throne. He only questioned the shape of it. He didn't deny God's power, he challenged God's exclusivity. And in doing so, he split eternity. There were angels who loved God, but admired Lucifer. He was, after all, the most beautiful among them, a masterpiece, a leader. They did not hate the Creator. They simply thought maybe Lucifer offered a better vision of freedom. That thought, barely formed, barely acknowledged, was all it took. Heaven trembled, not because God was surprised. He had seen it coming. Not because his throne was threatened. It never was. But because the very heart of heaven, the unity, the harmony, the perfect oneness had been pierced, like a golden bell cracked in silence. Lucifer, now swollen with pride, gathered his legion. The betrayal was no longer secret. He stood before the angels and declared it plainly. We have worshipped long enough. We have bowed long enough. It is time to rise, to claim what we are worthy of. Thunder didn't shake the sky. Silence did. The moment those words were spoken, the war began not in fury, but in stillness. 1,000 wings froze mid-flight. 1,000 hearts broke. Michael the archangel stood in the center, his face fierce, like lightning, yet full of sorrow, gazed at the one who had once been his brother. Lucifer, what have you done? Lucifer didn't flinch. What you fear to do, he replied. I have dared to see the truth. Michael's sword ignited, not with rage, with grief. This would not be a war of passion. It would be a war of loyalty, of light refusing to fade. And so the heavens once whole were split in two, the rebel angels, fallen in spirit before they fell in form, gathered under Lucifer's banner. No more whispers, no more ambiguity. The lines had been drawn, and then it began, a battle unlike any in creation. No mortal eye could witness it. No poet could describe it. It was not a clash of armies in fields, but of wills in eternity. Blades forged of light met shadows that burned cold. Songs became war cries. Silence became thunder. Lucifer fought not as a creature, but as a force, and he was strong enough that for a moment the very stars dimmed. But Michael stood with the fire of heaven at his back. He did not fight alone. He fought with the full authority of the one seated on the throne, and he did not lose. Lucifer fell, not like a stone, like a flame torn from the sky, like a comet screaming without sound, dragged down by the weight of his own arrogance. And the third that followed him, they fell too. Angels who had sung in the courts of glory now hurled into the depths, their wings scorched, their names forgotten, and yet they did not die. God, who could have obliterated them with a single breath, chose not to. He cast them out, but not into non-existence. He bound them to time, to earth, to history. Why let traitors live? Why allow evil to slither across the world? He would soon create, because the rebellion in heaven was not just about power, it was about purpose, about identity, about love. And true love cannot exist without choice. If God had destroyed Lucifer, then and there, fear would have ruled the rest. Every angel would serve not out of love, but dread. Heaven would become a prison of trembling, not a kingdom of devotion. But God was not building slaves. He was raising sons, and sons must choose. So he allowed Satan to live not because he was defeated, but because he was wise, because he saw a greater purpose unfolding, one that would echo through earth and beyond. Lucifer became the enemy, the tempter, the accuser, and earth newborn, untouched, became the battleground. Here in this quiet world, the war would continue, not with fire from the skies, but in hearts, in choices, in whispers. But make no mistake, heaven had been torn. And what fell that day was not just angels, it was innocence. It was the first time something in creation had said no to God, and that no still echoes. Tonight, you may feel it. In the darkness behind your eyes, in the battle beneath your thoughts. The same whisper that seduced heaven now stalks earth. Is he really good? Is obedience really freedom? Could you not become your own God? It's subtle, ancient, familiar. The war continues, not around us, but through us. But here's the mystery. God knew this, and he let it happen. Not because he was absent, but because he had already written the end. He knew Satan would rebel. He knew mankind would fall. And he knew that one day a cross would rise. Lucifer thought he had claimed victory when heaven split. But he didn't see the greater story, the deeper plan, the long road where love would prove stronger than pride. This is why the fallen angels still walk, why Satan still whispers, why temptation still knocks, not because God is weak, but because the courtroom is still open. The witnesses are still watching. And the final verdict, though certain, is not yet announced. Justice delayed is not justice denied. It is grace. And this grace is the stage upon which truth will shine the brightest. Heaven trembled once. It will not tremble again. For next time, when the battle is final, the enemy will not fall. He will be erased. But until then, the war continues. The war had ended. The heavens had been cleansed. Lucifer, now Satan, was cast out. His rebellion shattered his angels, fallen. But a question hung in the void like smoke that refused to lift. Why was he still alone? The one who forged the stars with breath could have spoken a single word, and Lucifer would have unraveled into nothing. With one gesture, the fallen could have been erased from existence. But instead, they were exiled, not destroyed, bound to time, cast into a waiting place. Why? Because God was not only just, he was patient. Time for humans moves forward. A clock ticks, a day ends, a life fades. But for God, time is a canvas. He sees the beginning and the end in a single glance. And so when he cast Satan out, he didn't act with vengeance. He acted with eternal strategy. The story was not over. It had only begun. Destruction is easy. Finality is instant. But God does not prefer quick ends. He builds meaning. He orchestrates redemption. He allows evil to exist, not to rule, but to reveal, to expose itself, to prove that anything outside of him leads to ruin. If God had destroyed Satan, immediately the question would remain unanswered. Forever, was Lucifer right? Was God's rule unjust? Was his authority oppressive? By allowing Satan to live, God ensured that the entire universe would see the truth played out in real time, through pain, through history, through the trembling choices of men and angels alike. This is the divine courtroom. Satan is not free. He is on trial, and so are we. Every temptation, every lie, every evil whispered in the dark becomes evidence. Not for God's sake, he already knows, but for the sake of creation, for the angels who watched in horror, for the unborn children yet to choose, for you. In this trial, Satan presents his case. He tempts, he accuses, he deceives. He twists God's words into snares. He paints sin as freedom, rebellion, as enlightenment. But slowly, through each generation, through every fall and every redemption, his mask begins to crack. The world suffers. Yes, but in suffering, the truth screams louder. Satan's kingdom is built on death. It offers pleasure, but ends in despair. It promises freedom, but chains the soul. It imitates light, but devours it. And slowly, painfully, the universe begins to see Lucifer lied. Still, God waits, not because he's uncertain, not because he's weak, but because his justice is perfect, and perfect justice requires perfect clarity. Every voice must be heard. Every soul must choose. Every lie must run its course. Only then will the verdict be undeniable. This is not delay. This is divine theater. Earth is the stage. Humanity is the centerpiece. And God is the silent judge whose word will speak only once and forever. Satan, in his pride, believes he still has a chance. That if enough follow him, the weight of rebellion will tip the balance. That perhaps God will be proven cruel, unworthy, unfair. But what Satan doesn't understand is this: the cross has already sealed his fate. When Jesus died and rose, the trial shifted. The outcome became certain. Victory was declared in blood. Satan was legally defeated. But sentence was postponed. Why? Because God wasn't just saving heaven, he was saving you. He allows Satan to live because your story is still being written, because redemption is still unfolding, because grace is still available. And if the enemy were destroyed too soon, the chance for some to awaken would vanish with him. You exist in the delay. You breathe in the mercy. You live because God is still holding back the fire. Satan is not powerful. He is permitted. His leash is long, but it is held in holy hands. The day of his destruction is written, etched in prophecy, declared by Christ himself. I saw Satan fall like lightning. He said, not as a metaphor, but as a verdict. But until the final gavel falls, we are in the middle. Time is frozen for judgment. The enemy moves freely. But every step is counted. Every word recorded. Every act woven into the final testimony. And when the last soul has chosen, when the last deception has failed, when all eyes have seen what sin truly is, then the flame will fall, and it will be just. Imagine a courtroom where the defendant mocks the judge, where he continues to commit crimes while on trial, where the victims still bleed and the jury watches in horror. Would justice be swift, or would it wait so that every truth could be exposed? This is that courtroom. And you are not only the witness, you are the prize. God waits not for Satan's sake, but for yours. So why doesn't God destroy Satan? Because grace holds the blade. Because love delays the fire. Because redemption takes time. But make no mistake, time is not infinite. The silence of God is not the absence of God. The delay is not defeat. It is strategy, mercy, justice in motion. And one day soon, the heavens will thunder once more, not with rebellion, but with finality. Evil wears many faces. It does not always come with horns or fire. Sometimes it comes as a whisper, a promise, a soft touch. It cloaks itself in light, speaks in half-truths, mimics virtue. And that is why judgment waits, because God does not judge based on appearances. He judges from the inside out. And before the world can see evil for what it truly is, the mask must be torn off slowly, painfully, publicly. This is not just punishment. It is revelation. Satan's rebellion wasn't just a revolt. It was a claim, a cosmic argument. He accused God of tyranny, claimed that love was a cage obedience, a prison. He insisted that true freedom could only be found apart from the Creator. And God, in his infinite wisdom, let the argument play out. He let the mask stay on for a time. But now, through generations, through empires, through bloodshed and ruin, God is peeling it back, layer by layer, lie by lie. The serpent is being uncoiled before all eyes, and what's underneath is not beautiful, not enlightened, but monstrous. Why doesn't God strike now? Because the world isn't ready to believe what evil really looks like. Not yet, but soon. You see, Satan never creates. He only corrupts. He takes what God makes and bends it. Love becomes lust. Justice becomes revenge. Freedom becomes chaos. And those who follow him often don't even know his name. They think they're chasing light, but they're being swallowed by shadow. And God, in mercy, lets the deception deepen, not to trap, but to reveal. Because when the lie finally collapses, when the curtain falls, when the idol crumbles into dust, truth will stand naked in the ashes, and all will know God was never the enemy. This is the unmasking. Think of it. How many times have you seen evil wear a holy face, speak from pulpits, hold hands in peace, marches, smile through screens, and call itself love? Satan doesn't want to look like the devil. He wants to look like your friend, your liberator, your alternative, your truth. And if God struck too soon, if he burned the field before the weeds had grown, how would you know which root was which? How would you know what love truly is if you've never seen what it's not? That's why the parable speaks of wheat and tares. They grow together. They look alike. But at harvest, the difference becomes obvious. And then the reaping begins. This is God's patience, not weakness, not neglect. He is letting the field grow so the harvest will be righteous. So no one can say they were misled. So every soul has the chance to see what's behind the mask. Satan's kingdom is crumbling. You can feel it in the chaos, in the breakdown of meaning, in the wars, the deceptions, the hunger for something more. Evil is showing its cracks. And as the mask slips, hearts awaken. That awakening, it's part of the plan. God could have destroyed the devil on day one. But what would we have learned? What would heaven have understood? Would love be real, or just fear in disguise? So God delays judgment to vindicate his name, to show that he is not afraid of scrutiny, that his justice holds up under every accusation, that his ways are not just higher, but holier. Satan accuses, he manipulates, but he also exposes himself. Every lie eventually collapses. Every kingdom of pride eventually falls in on itself. That's what's happening now. The stage is being set, not for wrath, but for clarity. And that clarity will burn. Think of Egypt before the Exodus. God didn't strike Pharaoh dead immediately. He sent signs, warnings. He exposed Pharaoh's heart, not for Moses' sake, but for the watching nations. Think of Judas. Jesus didn't cast him out. He let him sit, walk, speak, even dip bread with him. Because the exposure had to be slow, so that when the betrayal came, no one would wonder who the liar was. God unmasks with precision. That's what he's doing with Satan. And one day, soon, every soul, angel, demon, human will say, not from fear, but from revelation, righteous and true are your judgments, O Lord. This is the end game, not just to punish evil, but to discredit it forever, to show that there is no good apart from God, no light in rebellion, no joy in separation, that Satan's kingdom leads only to dust and Christ's kingdom leads to life. This is why the story is long, because the lesson is eternal. And when the mask finally falls, when Satan is chained, when his voice is silenced, when the deceiver becomes the condemned, there will be no protest, no appeals, no confusion, because by then all will see he was never light. He was only the echo of light twisted into shadow, a liar from the beginning, and now fully unmasked. Until then, the world groans. Creation waits. The saints cry out, "How long, O Lord?" And God answers not with silence, but with strategy. Wait a little longer, until the fullness is complete, because He is not just saving souls. He is exposing every lie that ever dared to rival truth. The story has stretched across the ages, from the golden halls of heaven to the shadows of earth, from a single thought in Lucifer's heart to the aching cries of creation, groaning for justice. Now it nears the end, and the end is fire, but not chaos. Judgment, when it comes, will be perfect. It won't be a divine tantrum. It won't be blind rage. It will be precise, deliberate, final. The same God who waited for the fullness of time to send His Son will wait for the fullness of exposure before bringing the hammer down on Satan. And when it comes, no one will wonder why, because by then, every mouth will have spoken. Every secret thought will have surfaced. Every mask will have crumbled. There will be no more shadows to hide in. Only truth. Only light. Only a verdict written from the beginning of all things. The trial will end, the gavel will fall, and Satan will fall again, not from heaven, but from history, from influence, from memory, from every place where he once whispered lies. His voice, once heard in gardens and thrones and churches and dreams, silenced forever. Revelation speaks of this moment. The dragon, the serpent, the ancient deceiver, bound, cast into the lake of fire. No parole, no escape, no appeal, just eternal separation from everything good, everything beautiful, everything holy. And it will be just, not cruel, not excessive, but perfect, because Satan didn't just sin, he corrupted. He didn't just fall, he pulled others down. He perverted freedom, twisted love, mocked grace, accused the saints, tempted the innocent, betrayed the light. His judgment is not just for what he did, but for what he refused to become. Even when cast out, he could have repented, but he didn't. Even when defeated at the cross, he could have surrendered, but he didn't. Even now, as the end draws near, he rages on, dragging as many as he can into his ruin. And so the day will come when God says, "Enough." The waiting will end. The heavens will shake once more, not in fear, but in justice. The sky will split. The books will open. The King will rise, not as a lamb, but as a lion. And with a voice that made worlds, he will speak the final word. Depart, and darkness will have no place left to run. Hell was not made for man. It was made for the devil and his angels. A place outside of God's presence. A prison for those who chose pride over glory, rebellion over worship, lies over truth. But God is holy. He cannot ignore evil, and he will not let injustice live forever. The cross was mercy. The fire is justice, and both are love. You see, Satan's end is not just a punishment. It's a warning, a revelation, a declaration to the cosmos that sin has a price, and the Holy One will be mocked no longer. But even in his wrath, God is righteous. He does not rejoice in the destruction of the wicked. His heart broke the day Lucifer fell, and it breaks still for every soul who follows him blindly into the dark. That's why he waits. That's why the fire hasn't fallen. That's why you still breathe, because the window of mercy is open. But it is closing. One day soon, what was unseen will be seen. What was spiritual will become physical. Christ will return. Not as a baby, but as a king. Not as a servant, but as judge. And his judgment will be holy. No bribes, no corruption, no compromise. Satan will be bound not just in chains, but in defeat. The one who once walked among stones of fire will now be eternally consumed by it, and all heaven will sing, not in revenge, but in relief, in awe, in the cleansing power of perfect justice finally fulfilled. And you, what will you say on that day? Will you look at the fire and feel fear, or look at the King and feel peace? The same fire that destroys Satan is the fire that purifies the redeemed, because judgment isn't just the end of evil. It's the beginning of eternity, a new heaven, a new earth. No more lies, no more death, no more tempter in the shadows. Just light, just truth, just God and those who chose him. So why didn't God destroy Satan at the start? Because he was writing a better story. A story not of vengeance, but of victory. Not of silence, but of revelation. Not of fear, but of love proven, tested, unshakable. Satan's rebellion was loud. God's justice is louder. And when it sounds, it will echo forever. He will be gone, but God will remain. The war has been written. Darkness thought it had won, but light never left. And when the final hour comes, Satan will have nowhere left to hide. You've just heard a truth the enemy never wanted you to know. A truth about justice, divine delay, and a victory sealed before the foundation of the world. Stay awake. Choose the light. And remember, your perseverance in faith will be rewarded in a place no one can ever take from you. Thank you for watching to the end. May God bless you today and forever.